Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dear student, in this lesson I am going to talk about Izhar. What is Izhar? Izhar, it means clearly pronounce Noon sakin or Noon tanween. So because we are talking about Noon sakin or Noon tanween, we have to find out where is the articulation point of Noon, how we can pronounce it. When we're talking about clearly pronounced Noon sakin, how we're going to do, what we have to do, and how we're going to do it. Okay, if you can see on the screen, there is a tongue, or the upper part, which is called root of the tongue, and the lower part of your tongue, which is called tip of the tongue. Okay, this is all part inside of your tongue. Okay, the parts that we are going to talk about and the makhraj, or the articulation of Noon sakin, is the lower part of your tongue, which is called tip of the tongue. Okay, tip of the tongue. So Noon can be born in this part. Noon is not only the first or the one of the letters that can be articulated in this part, but we have some more letters. Okay, so just remember this point, this part is called tip of the tongue, and in the next slide we're going to find out how many letters can be built in this part, which is called tip of the tongue, the lower part of your tongue. Okay, so as you see, the tip of the tongue, we have 5 articulation points, and in these 5 articulation point, 11 letters can be articulated, can be built. Okay, as you see, these are the letters. The ones that highlighted in the same colors, it means they can be at the same point, the same position, can be articulated in the same position. For example, this 3 as the same position, and this 3, the, sin, sad as the same position, and the, and va as the same position, and Noon and Ra. So Noon is one of the letters that can be built, or it has the articulation point on the tip of the tongue. Okay, that is this is just for general information, to get an idea where Noon is located. So our point, we concentrated on Noon. We concentrate on Noon, the articulation. It is articulation point, and it is pronunciation when we're talking about Izhar. For articulation point of Noon, this is the tip of the tongue that we talked about. This part of your tongue should reach the gum. This is gum. Okay, the gum just above of your 2 upper front teeth. This is front teeth. The 2 upper front teeth. This part is the gum. So the tip of your tongue should stick, reach the gum just above of your 2 upper front teeth. Okay, this is the palate. So be careful. Your tongue should not reach the palate, but the gum just above your 2 front teeth. Okay, so when this tip of your tongue reaches this part, the articulation point of Noon will appears clearly. It means you clearly pronouncing this Noon. This is the case. This is not only the case for Noon sakin when we're talking about Noon sakin or Noon tanween, but there's some more situations that the same process you need to be happen when you're pronouncing the Noon. This other situation, this is the articulation point of Noon for Noon with sukoon. So when you see any kind of Noon that holding sukoon, or any tanween that not being staggered, you have to do same process that I discussed in the previous slide. It means top of the tip of the tongue need to reach the gum just above your 2 front teeth. Okay, The second situation, we're going to this in detail in the next slide, inshallah. But just remember that we note these things that I discussed in the previous slide. It is not just the case for noon noon sakin, but only for noon that holding sukun and noon tanween that not being staggered, and also for noon with haraka. What type of haraka we talking about? Fatha, kasra, and dhamma. So when you see any noon holding fatha, kasra, and dhamma, you have to do the same process. Tip of the tongue reach the gum just above your upper front of the teeth. Okay. The third one, when you see any noon holding shadda, any noon that holding shadda, you have to do the same process. The fourth is that when noon that been merged in the following noon, it means idgham. When we have idgham of noon sakin, of noon, to the following letter, which is also noon, in this case we have to do the same process. But this process cannot be used for ikhfa, okay? Because ikhfa is something different, okay? We're going to talk about ikhfa, inshallah, in another lesson. Just remember, we have 4 types or 4 situations that we're going to use the same process of tip of the tongue to reach the gum just above of your 2 front teeth. Here is some of the example about the 4 of the situations that we talked about. First one, when we have noon sakin. In here, they missed to put down sukun on top of this noon. So imagine we have noon on top of this noon, so we have to clearly pronounce this noon as an'amta. The second one, when noon holding fatha, kasra, and dhamma. Can you see this noon holding fatha and noon holding dhamma? So you have to do or use the same process. Tip of your tongue reach the gum just above of your upper 2 teeth, of your front teeth. Okay. In here we have tanween fatha. So any tanween that not being staggered need to be use the same process. Ajaban, ban, min ni'mah. The fourth one, when noon being merged into the following noon, it means when we have idgham of noon from noon. Okay, idgham noon to noon. It means merging this noon inside the following first letter, which is noon. In this case, this noon, the second noon, need to be clearly pronounced or do the same situations that I talked about. So this process cannot be used for ikhfa because ikhfa is something else, and we're going to discuss about the ikhfa in another lesson, inshallah. Here's some example about the 4 cases that I talked about. The first one, when noon holding sukun, but in here, unfortunately, they forgotten to put down sukun on top of noon. So imagine this noon holding sukun. In this case, because noon holding sukun, we have to clearly pronounce this noon or use the same process that I have discussed in the previous slide. And it means tip of your tongue reach the gum just above of your the front of your 2 teeth. Okay. In here, noon that holding fatha and noon that holding dhamma. In these 2 cases also, or even if noon has kasra underneath, you have to clearly pronounce, or tip of your tongue should reach the gum just above of your front upper 2 teeth. Okay. When, nu, na, nu, na, nu. And this one, ba, was that holding tanween fatha. So in this case also we have to do or use the same process. Ben. In here is the idgham, number 4 in the previous slide. When we have idgham of noon to the noon, when this noon merge into the following noon, the second noon, we have to use the process that I talked about in the previous slide. Okay, here's some example about the situations that you're going to use it. But our lesson actually is about izhar, the first point. If you can see again, the first point, noon with sukun and tanween. Okay, so we're going to talk about this one, the first one. So the first one, when we see any kind of noon that holding sukun, this is the sukun, the sign of the sukun, just like a head of letter ha, or any type of noon like this one, holding sukun. In this case, we have to use the process, and it's called izhar. Clearly pronounce that noon. How can you recognize it in your book? In your tajweed book, this noon always been highlighted in black color. Highlighted in black color and always holding sukun. So we're going to take some example in the next slide, inshallah, to make it easier for you to remember. And also, if we have tanween, the tanween should not be or must not be staggered like this one, tanween fatha and tanween dhamma. The second dhamma need to be upside down, and kasra, the same as this one, not to be staggered at all, and highlighted in your book, into your tajweed book, need to be highlighted in black color. Okay, and for double check, if to find out if you have izhar or not, after noon is sakin, the noons are holding sukun and the tanweens are not being staggered, we have one of the throat letters. What are the throat letters? Ha and hamza, ha and ain, kha and ghain. Does not necessary to memorize these letters, as long as when you find it out that noon holding sukun and highlighted in black, and tanweens being highlighted in black and not being staggered, just look back after them. You can find one of the throat letters. Okay, as we can see in these examples. For example, noon in here holding sukun. This is in here highlighted in green, but in your tajweed book in black color. Okay, so holding sukun. After that we have hamza. So in here this noon need to be clearly pronounced, and it's called izhar. Okay, need to be clearly pronounced. Use the process that I discussed in the first slide. Tip of your tongue reaches the gum just above of your two of your front teeth. Yen, auna, yen, okay? Doesn't matter if the throat letters came straight after the noon in the same word or in the separate word, okay? At the beginning of the following word, okay? As in here, noon is sakin, noon holding sukun, and we have hamza or ha or ain and ha or ghain, kha, one of the throat letter just after noon that holding sukun. And here is the tanween. Tanween dhamma, tanween kasra, tanween fatha, followed by one of the throat letters. So in here, these tanweens need to be clearly pronounced. Use the first process as I discussed in the first slide. How about how you can deal it in your book? In your book is very, very easy. As I said, first one, if we have tanween or noon that holding sukun. As you see, this tanween is black. It is not being staggered. And after that, for double check, we have hamza. This one is hamzat al-wasl, but when we pronouncing them, we have to pronounce it. We have to pronounce it as hamza fatha. That's why if we continue, we have hamza double checked, and this is izhar. You have to say basirun when you continue to the following. Okay, so this is izhar. Another la'afuun, this is izhar, because tanween dhamma highlighted in black color, not being staggered, and after that we have one of the throat letters. Okay, another example, if I can't find anymore. This noon, can you see this noon holding sukun, highlighted in black, and after that we have hamza. This is the izhar, how you're going to find it out in your book and deal with it. Clearly pronounce that one. It means tip of your tongue should reach the gum just above of your upper part of your two front teeth. Inshallah, it's clear. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.